Hello, everyone. It's a great pleasure to have this session on co-creation with multiple stakeholders, which will actually focus on one of the chapters of the Digital Education Outlook 2023, which was written by Inge Molenaar and Peter Sleegers, who are with us. So Inge is a professor at Radboud University, and Peter reminds me he's working with Inge as part of the Noline lab. That's and then we'll have in fact, one of the things that the chapter tries to do and what we try to promote as part of this is the principle of co-creation. So the idea that we need to have end users being a part of the creation process, and also the fact that we need to think of how we can effectively work, make researchers, developers, companies, schools, and governments work together to produce the kind of right tools and resources for digital education to really make a difference in school and for education. And we're going to explore different models trying to achieve that outcome. And we've already talked a bit in a previous session about support organizations, so how actually countries can use some specific agencies or some part of their ministry to actually support the digital strategy that they have put in place. One other element is different types of institutions that we want to explore that actually try to showcase how actually co-creation can be a reality. It's something that we've been talking for a long time, that's been an aim also in other sectors, in fact, and it's something that is more difficult to achieve than to call for. But we have with us today, a great panel that is trying to do that for really different places in the world. So we have Linde Bieb at IMEC Smart Education, Roman Brugger from the Swiss EdTech Collider, George Siemens of Grail and AI Playground, and Jeremy Roschelle at Digital Promise, who are also going to talk about these different models. But we'll start with Inge and perhaps Peter on presentation of the chapter. So Inge, you have the floor, and tell us about what are the different models, etc. Go ahead.
Thank you, Stefan, and thank you all for being here today. I'm really excited to have this very international panel to talk about all the different initiatives to co-create AI and education. And I will now start sharing my screen. Should be, yeah. So we're going to talk about co-creation with multiple stakeholders for better and more responsible digital resources, thinking about how to really put AI in education onto the next transformation of education. And just to give you a bit of an outline, I'll be talking about innovation with multiple stakeholders and how that is crucial, especially in a transition that we're currently looking at, and how we can use artificial intelligence in education in a way that's really going to contribute to better education. We're going to talk a little bit about isolated ecosystems of both educational professionals, scientists, and entrepreneurs, talking about different innovation models like the linear innovation model and a transition towards triple helix models. And the interesting thing here is this is not new, but it's very crucial in the application of AI in education. We're going to talk a little bit more about the common language to facilitate collaboration across different stakeholders. And then we're going to the core part of this talk today, and that's really about the different innovation labs and expert centers around the world. And they're also partially represented here in the paper. There are actually 11 labs being compared. And it's interesting to see how they focus on different types of activation and different types of ecosystems. And so this is a really nice way to learn from each other and try to push forward to new forms of innovation. And also what I wanted to stress already from the start, I think international collaboration here is crucial. It's really important to have this conversation together. I'm actually in the US right now, and I've seen quite a lot of things that I haven't seen in Europe over the last few months. So it's very interesting to see how you can merge different approaches from across the world together and how we can really benefit and learn from each other. So that's really what I would like to communicate in this session today. And that's also why we have so many international experts present. And then, of course, we can debate about insights and steps forward. Now, just a little bit about those isolated ecosystems. Traditionally, educational institutions have been working together a lot already around innovations in education, but have done that mostly within their own realm. And so they've been mostly talking to each other. The same goes for scientists. Scientific collaboration around artificial intelligence has been around for almost 35 years. AIED has been a conference that has started 35 years ago. There is a wide international community working together around this topic if we talk about research. And then also for entrepreneurs, they're well connected together. So entrepreneurs also work together in EdTech startups and facilitators. And again, here, there's been a long tradition of collaboration. The interesting thing is, though, that these different spheres, if you like, are not really connected very well. So educational institutions and scientists have traditionally worked together, but it's always been very difficult to bridge the theory to practice gap, if you like, and that's been discussed in educational sciences for a long time. Same for technology in education. Has been a lot of discussions around how we can bring what scientists already know to educational institutions and what are good models to do that. And similarly, science to entrepreneurs is also an interesting sphere that really needs to be bridged across the world. And I think there are good examples, but it's still something that we don't really see that often. Now, if we look at linear innovation models, traditionally, innovation goes from science to business to educational practices, which is actually no longer the case today. Oftentimes, business, especially in AI, runs the show and is actually forefronted compared to science. And actually, science oftentimes is leaking behind. So there is an interesting transformation in the innovation sphere. And then if we look at educational institutions, they're usually receiving innovations, not so much driving innovations themselves, although there are some really good examples where that does happen. And so we're really looking for connecting these different sectors more together in different innovation models. Now, the quadruple helix innovation model has been around for almost a decade as well, where the prologue is that science, business, and education should, in interaction and iterative cycles, collaboratively design new innovations and really move forward away from the more linear approach towards a more iterative approach to innovation, driving from co-creation, in which schools pronounce what they would like to learn and how they would like to use artificial intelligence, in this case, in their educational setting, science contributing their existing knowledge on that particular aspect, explaining what can and cannot be done and what is evidence-informed, and businesses really trying to understand how they can scale the solutions that are being asked for by both science and educational institutions. And in that co-creation cycle, new innovations can actually come into the schools and can be tested in schools. And what happens there is a really important process. Oftentimes we're thinking about the technical innovations when we talk about AI in education, but in fact, it's not just technology. We're also really thinking about the pedagogical, didactical innovations that are needed to make that technology integrate within the activities of the teachers and the day-to-day practice in schools. And I think that is often oversighted element. What you see is we think the technology is ready, we put it in a school, and we expect teachers and students to work with that. And that's just not the reality. Schools really need to transfer their working practices as well. Teachers really need to adjust to how artificial intelligence is integrated in their classroom. And this can be done in the co-creation cycle at a small scale to really come to solutions that help schools move forward. And then at co-implementation, you can actually take that to a larger level. And this is where you start addressing the not here invented syndrome that is often discussed in schools. It works in one particular context, but does it work across multiple contexts in multiple schools and in multiple different environments? And this is a a central point in educational sciences where we have been having a lot of discussions about what element of innovation is actually evidence-based and can function in all contexts, and what are actually contextual elements of innovation, and how much do innovations need to be adjusted to the context that they're integrated in. And that is where co-implementation comes into play, where you're not so much redoing the technology, but where you're really rethinking how the technology can be adjusted in that particular context. So I think the iteration between co-creation and co-implementation for this transformative stage that we're currently in, where AI is really changing how students are learning and teachers are teaching, is an essential element to make sure that innovations in fact scale in educational institutions. And that means that we're moving away from the traditional fundamental research, business development, and professional development elements that are in the actual different silos, but really try to go across that with multiple interactions. Then, if we want to have these stakeholders to collaborate together, it's important that they also understand each other. And we've been talking to all of these different stakeholders, and in fact, they all have a different language about AI in education. So it's really important to come to a bridging language that at least will help educators, but also scientists and entrepreneurs to understand each other so that they can collaboratively work on innovations. And we do that through the hybrid intelligence notion, where we really try to drive towards systems that combine artificial intelligence with human intelligence in such a way that they augment human learning and augment human teaching. And that's a different approach to replacing human teaching or replacing human learning. An essential question there is, who is in control of the actual specific elements in this environment, and how is the control division between the artificial intelligence and the actual human teacher? Is that really just about providing them with additional information that will change their practices, which will be on the teacher assistant side, or is it actually taking over considerably more steps and tasks that teachers are executing? In partial automation, for instance, adapting the learning materials to the needs of the learner, or even multiple tasks such as providing feedback and adjusting particular materials. So we can really think about how much the role of AI is impacting the role of the teacher and try to specify that as we go, so that we can have a dialogue about that transition of control and what that means for the actual teaching practices on a day-to-day basis. What also helps is really talking a little bit more at a super high level about what the AI is actually doing in that particular context. So is it actually detecting particular behavior, and then what kind of data streams are being used in that detection mode? And oftentimes this is still just log file information, so it has a relatively restricted view of what the student is doing. Then it's important to know what types of constructs are being diagnosed. Is it just student knowledge, or is it going beyond to student motivation or student self-regulated learning, which are broader constructs and then show more of what the student is actually engaging in while working with this technology? And then again, we have this iteration of ACT. What does it mean that the AI is in fact in this context? Is it just providing additional information, or is it actually acting itself in that particular scenario and really taking over tasks from the teacher? So in order to really understand and have a fruitful dialogue in the triangle between businesses, entrepreneurs, and scientists, it's important to understand, at least at a very basic level, what an artificial intelligence is capable of doing in an educational arrangement, and how you can push forward in developing that particular situation. If we look, and now we come to the more exciting part of this talk, if we look around innovation labs around the world, we actually been able to describe 11 different labs, and today I'm pretty sure there are almost another 10 or 12 new initiatives. This was scouted out last year this time, and I think these were the labs that were at the time innovating around artificial intelligence in education. And what you see is you have a number of large-scale American institutions that are funded by NSF, working on particular elements of artificial intelligence in education. And Jeremy will shortly talk a little bit more about that. We also see a number of different institutes that connect researchers mostly and help researchers collaborate around the world and try to exchange mostly on a research level. Then we have a number of initiatives that are working more towards the business development and business support arenas, such as the EdTech Collider, which Roman will shortly talk a little bit more about. Then there are a number of labs, mostly in Europe, and this one is in Australia, that really try to drive co-creation and co-implementation from a more educational perspective. And we only found one last year, but potentially there are more now, labs that are mostly focused on professional development. So really trying to help teachers develop professional skills as they go forward. So we can roughly indicate 5 different types of labs that we analyzed last year. And again, these different types are both fundamental research approaches, so towards more linear innovation, co-creation and co-implementation, where in co-creation it's more driving towards quadruple helix innovations, and co-implementation mostly improve teacher professional development and school innovations to go hand in hand with technology developments. Then there are the business development activities and improving collaboration and orchestration of international research. And if we put that again on that quadruple helix model, now the slide really gets confusing. You can see the different clusters of labs that are situated around the quadruple helix model to see how that sort of shows the current ecosystem of innovation centers and labs around the world. So I think it's important to realize that these labs have different approaches and different focuses as part of their ecosystems. And I will conclude this part of the presentation, and I will continue with describing some of the labs as we go. And fortunately, some of the people here can do that really well. So to conclude, multi-stakeholder triple helix innovation approaches include educational professionals, scientists, and entrepreneurs, and they're really needed together to advance artificial intelligence in education. We need a common language to support that collaboration among multiple stakeholders to drive towards a common understanding and to really make sure that these innovations are grounded in a mutual agreement. And then around the world, different innovation centers and labs are emerging, and they have different focuses towards more innovation, co-creation, co-implementation, and business development. So we really see a wide and diverse ecosystem being developed. I will quickly tell a little bit more about the National Education Lab on Artificial Intelligence. And Stefan, how am I doing on time?
You're doing fine. Go ahead.
Great. And then we'll jump on to the other speakers so that they can share their examples as well. So the National AI and Education Center is located in the Netherlands, in Europe. In short, we're just for K-12, so we really focus on primary and secondary education. We're roughly 45 people at this point in time, and we work from 9 consortium partners. The leading consortium partner is the university, the Radboud University, where I'm working. But we work together with 2 other universities, 3 school boards who are actually in our consortium and in our steering committee, 2 development companies that support regional development and business innovation, and 1 University of Applied Sciences. And that is because universities of applied sciences are in fact training teachers in the Netherlands. So that's why we included those. We have a 10-year timescale, 18 million euros, and we're funded by the National Growth Fund, which is our national investment policy from the government of the Netherlands. So this is the team, and this is a very diverse team. We have everything from teachers to professors to people who are actually programming, towards co-creation managers who are really articulating questions at schools, trying schools to really come forward and develop questions and problem situations that will help them innovate. We have two programs. We have a co-creation program that is really focused on collaborating in the triangle between educational institutions, science, and businesses. And we develop co-creation projects to really develop innovative, intelligent technical solutions. And these projects are always starting in the schools and with problem situations that schools put forward. So the general idea is that schools don't really know yet what they're using artificial intelligence for, but they do know very well which problems they face every single day. So we're really driving from those problem situations towards innovations that embody artificial intelligence. Next to the co-creation program, in which we're going to do 10 to 15 new innovations every single year, we're also driving a scientific program, which is really focused on responsible use of artificial intelligence in education. And that has the form of a pentagon, which would resonate with some of the American colleagues, but in fact has 5 different interdisciplinary research areas. The first one is learning sciences, pedagogical didactical background. So how can we improve learning and teaching with artificial intelligence? The second one is teacher training. How do we professionalize teacher trainers, and how do you help teachers to actually deal with these new innovations? We have a sustainable data focus area, which really looks on the infrastructure and the data needed in this endeavor. We have, of course, artificial intelligence, but then mostly directed at how do you use it in education. And the last one is embedded ethics. There's a lot of discussion around ethics. There are already existing guidelines. I've used the existing guidelines from the Netherlands, from Europe, from the UNESCO, from the OECD, but they're still relatively abstract. And so the embedded ethics theme is really driving that implementation in schools while we innovate and while we do those innovations. Just one quick example is of a co-creation project that we started is our technical reading with automatic speech recognition, which was actually a request from teachers in schools in the Netherlands. They cannot follow the development of technical reading in a very high detailed level, because in Dutch, which is a transparent language, you need to really measure reading speed while you're looking at technical reading skills. And this is super intense because you do it on a one-on-one basis and you have a child read a number of different words. So teachers were asking us, can we do this in a more effective manner? And can we actually do it in a way so that we can support and see much more of the technical reading ability of our children as they learn how to read? So we connected researchers on reading, which in Dutch, as being a transparent language, is profoundly different than from English. We have a company that is actually doing automatic speech recognition and also is specialized in automatic speech recognition from children, which is, of course, very different from adults. And then Dutch, there's only roughly about, I think, 25 million people speaking Dutch. So it's not nearly as good as it is in English, unfortunately. So they are doing our automatic speech recognition. And then we have the schools that actually post this question and will do the implementation in their work sphere. So this is how our projects are coming into being. There's a question from a school. We connect it with researchers and with companies that can actually provide the solutions, and then go into a 3-year iterative process to work towards solutions in the actual school and move towards implementation and validation of that. So ideally, over the next 10 years, we'll merge the triangle and the pentagon together and really move towards innovative practices that are actually grounded in schools and also provide us with additional insights into how to use artificial intelligence in classrooms in a responsible manner. So that's it from my side. And I would now very much like to switch over to Jeremy, who will tell you more about some of the American initiatives.
Thanks. That was great. I love the pentagon with the triangle. Jeremy Roschelle, I work at Digital Promise. It's a US-based nonprofit. Although we don't use the triple helix language, that's really who we are. Digital Promise defines itself as working the intersections among researchers, innovators, and educators. And so we're an intermediary making the flow better across those. So let's go to the next slide. So I wanted to say a little bit about why I think it's important And I want to just pick one thing, one reason why it's really important to have these partnerships. And it goes to what Inge said about business now directly influencing education so much, which I've depicted to the right as a big finger on the scale. And these partnerships can coalesce other voices to present alternative visions, alternative measurements, alternative directions. And we need a vision in society that is not directly business telling education what they could or should do. And so I think we need strong, independent, research-based voices. And that's why we need network hubs, is to bring greater numbers of people together in a coherent way to provide examples of alternative futures. Let's go to the next slide. So I'm going to tell you quickly about 3 hubs I'm part of. One is Circles. Circles works on behalf of the National Science Foundation, which independently of us makes grants for partnerships to work together with emerging technologies, a lot of AI, to improve teaching and learning. Once those grants are made, we work with the community afterwards of all the separate partnerships. 2 years ago, we had a big convening during the pandemic, and partnerships emerged as a major theme of the work. And so we did this report to the left called Partnerships with Change, Transforming Research. I just want to say a word about that. What it is case studies of what actually happens when a partnership works. And the first thing I want to say is what we documented very clearly is between the proposal that was submitted and the end of year 1, partnerships change what's being designed. They transform what the intent is of the project. That's huge. It moves to more closely reflect what educators want, for example. Secondly, these partnerships structurally change how the work proceeds. There's a great example in the report of reformulating what the Human Subjects Review or Institutional Review Board, what their role is in ethics with AI. And that's huge to just structurally change how work gets done. And they also engage in a lot of capacity building so that more people can participate. So if you want to see why partnerships, I would suggest you take a look at this report on circles.org for just clear case studies of the difference it makes when a partnership leads the work. Let's go to the next example. Yeah, so my next example is Digital Promise is part of, it's one of 5 US $20 million large AI institutes in education, which our National Science Foundation has been funding. And our mission is to advance narrative-centered learning, which is learning that occurs when students are engaged in stories and games. And we have a nexus role, which I lead in our Engage AI Institute. And so one thing we've been doing, I just featured to the left, is redesigning the AI Bill of Rights. That's a document that the White House in the United States put out, an AI Bill of Rights. And we redesigned it with young people to reflect their voice on the ethics of AI and what they want to see. And I saw a question to in the Q&A already come up. And the question is, has the potential of nonprofit organizations for knowledge dissemination within this model been fully realized? Well, fully, I don't know about fully, but our Nexus has been really involved. We've been involved in writing the US Department of Education's AI report, which came out in May or June. We've been providing technical expertise to state-based educator organizations. We've been sharing information with the US Congress. We're hosting a researcher practitioner industry that is a triple helix forum that meets once a year for a day. And we've been influencing philanthropic funders to fund partnership models. So I think we are doing a lot of dissemination and getting out there. I think part of that is possible because there's this huge demand for people to talk intelligently about AI, and it makes it easier to be out there disseminating the message when someone wants to listen. Let's go to the next slide. I'll just give one more example and then I'll be done. I've also served in a role with the EdSafe AI Alliance, which is a global initiative, and it really has a lot of industry voices focusing on how to make AI safe. And so some of the things that are going on in that set of relationships are fellowships to build capacity, again, going back to that capacity building theme, for example, women leaders in AI. EdSafe is creating policy labs with school districts to work together with researchers and other partners on how they're going to approach AI policy-wise for their district. It's released safe benchmarks for industry to benchmark how well are they doing on producing safe AI for education. And it's been providing feedback on proposed policies in multiple countries and regions. And so just to my closing slide, please. So those are 3 different partnerships. A long time ago in my career, I moved to San Francisco, and I just loved this on the radio. There's this DJ named Scoop Nisker, and he would open his broadcast every day saying, if you don't like the news, go make some of your own. And I think that's what these partnerships are about. They're about, well, we don't like what's coming from industry for education fully. Let's go co-create something that represents our view. And so what do research hubs do? They build community. They map and synthesize emerging knowledge. They activate partnership that is really centered in educational values. And then again, responsive to the question that was asked, I think hubs have a key role in amplifying education-centered visions and voices. If you want to be in touch with me, I provided my LinkedIn. Love to chat with you more. And of course, we'll have time to talk as the webinar continues. Thanks.
Thank you, Inge and Jeremy. So, Lynn, without further ado, you're next.
Yes. Hi, my name is Lynn. I'm a program manager of the IMEC Smart Education program. I'm just going to share my screen here. So I'm from Belgium. So this is a Belgian program. And the program started in 2017. Normally it will at least go on until 2026 because it's renewed every 5 years. And it's funded by the government in Belgium. So we have 1 million of like basic funding every year, which we use to leverage it to find other projects within our scope. And our scope is lifelong learning, so it's K-12 education, but also corporate learning. And yeah, as Inge said before, and Jeremy, we also focus on collaboration between different stakeholders in our program. So I will introduce you all to our program. So on the right, you see that we always try to combine the government, the industry, with the schools and the corporate training and the research by creating disruptive innovations. And we do this with a data-driven approach. So our program is built up in what we call 4 layers. So we have the bottom layer, which you see here, which is the fundamental and strategic basic research. And there in this layer, it's really the researchers that are in the lead. So I will get more into depth the continuous presentation. So that's like our basic layer. And then we have our second layer. And here are the companies are in the lead. So you see here that the companies are in the first place, but they work together with researchers, with schools, and with the government. In our third layer, the schools are in the lead. So they decide what's going to happen, and they are helped by companies, by the government, and by researchers. And in our fourth layer, we really try to make sure that all those innovations can be used by the society. And which is really important in our program is the arrows you see in purple, because all those layers affect each other. So in each layer, another stakeholder is in the lead, which defines the projects, but they all have impact on each other. For instance, sometimes we have schools who have an idea to develop a product, and that product can become so good that they start a startup, for instance. Or sometimes they develop a feature, and then we work together with EdTech Station, which is a membership organization, and then of EdTech companies. Then they say, okay, there's been a feature developed. Is this interesting for you to use this feature? And then we bring those companies together, and then we explain what we have developed. In the other direction, sometimes we have a startup, and then we have a lot of data. We can use that data to do the fundamental research, which is the arrow to the bottom. And then sometimes we do research about a topic for some years. For instance, in the case of dashboarding, that's what we've done. And then we feel, okay, we have a lot of knowledge about this topic, and we really need to share the knowledge because it's on we have a kind of a readiness level to make something with it. And then we ask for companies, okay, let's talk about this topic, and then we can see where their bottleneck is, and then together with the companies we do a layer 2 project. So that's how it's all connected with each other. So if I go a little bit more into depth and I go and zoom in on the first layer, which is a layer of our researchers, there we found that it's very important for us to have a clear focus. So we cannot be experts in everything, and we are definitely not experts in everything. So we have 3 basic expertise. So that's AI, more on the learning analytics side, semantic knowledge of representation and interoperability, and also instructional design and efficiency. And we use that expertise to solve 4 grand challenges, which you see on the bottom. I will not go too much into depth. Of course, for those 4 challenges, sometimes we need expertise we don't have in-house. And that's why it's so important that we do events like this. We really need to know what the other people have for expertise, and we really need to combine the expertise to solve these grand challenges. So that's our first layer, where the researchers are in the lead, but they're permanently in contact with companies, with schools, and with the government. For our second layer, here the companies are in the lead. So how does this work? Every year, a couple of times a year, companies can come to us and they can say, okay, we have a mutual problem, and it's a problem that needs some research on it. Because we cannot fix it alone. And we think it will also be interesting for another company. So we actually push the companies to work together around a topic. As I said before, for instance, dashboarding. How do we make dashboarding better and more understandable for our teachers? So the industry is in the center here. We define exactly what the problem is, and then we go and find experts. So we go to our researchers and we go to schools to find an audience that can help us really grasp the problem, and also make sure that we solve it in a solution that is also practical for the people who are going to use it. So here we always work together with user groups who are involved from the beginning until the end in making a new innovation. And then as a result, we have a proof of concept that can again go to the market, become a product, or become a spin-off. Then we have our third layer, and that was a layer where the schools are in charge. So every year, teachers can come up to us and say, okay, we have an idea, we have a problem in our class, and we really want to solve that problem. And I think I have an idea how I can solve it. So then we select projects, and we connect the teachers with companies and with researchers to find a solution for their problem in their classroom. And then it's the teachers themselves who really define what the end product will be, together with their students. But of course, we connect them with the knowledge we have from the research perspective. So you see, in the 3 layers, it's a little bit different. It's another stakeholders within the leads, but they're always connected. So they're always involved in the process, but the initial scope is defined by other stakeholders. And then in the 4th layer, that's a layer where we want to do a rollout of all the innovations in Flanders. And this can be through a project like the iLearn project, where the government says, okay, now we want to invest some budget to making sure that digital learning is available to the whole of Flanders. And then we can push innovations and the teachers can use it. But also sometimes in this layer, we work together with iStart, for instance, which is an incubator for new spin-offs. And we work together with EdTech Station also a lot, which is a kind of new, they're already 1 year old, a membership organization that combines the EdTech providers in Belgium. So they help us a lot with putting our innovations out there and capturing what the companies and the schools need. This is our uptake and how we do our program. So if anyone wants to connect, or if anyone thinks, we have an expertise that you definitely don't have, or maybe we have the same expertise, please connect, and then we'll see what happens.
Thank you very much, Lynn. We're going to go next to Roman. And I would like to remind the audience that if you have questions, just put them in the question and answers tab of the platform, and we'll try to take them at the end of the presentations.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Hello, everyone. So we're a little bit further down in the south of Europe, in Switzerland, as you can see. So I'm spearheading the Swiss EdTech Collider, which is based at the Swiss Federal Institute of Technology. What is the Swiss EdTech Collider? So the Swiss EdTech Collider is Switzerland's leading hub and center ecosystem for the digital transformation. And we support startups that actually focus on the development of EdTech. So we help with the transformation of education with technological solutions. So we created over the past 6 years a unique ecosystem in and around EdTech and education, you have to see. So at the end of the day, what we want to do is to provide visibility for EdTech innovation in Switzerland to public schools, but also to private schools. And it looks like this. So at the core of our organization, we are not-for-profit association, are the EdTech members itself. I will tell you how many EdTech members currently are part of our community, but then also we call it the inner circle. We have very close connections to the academic and scientific research labs of the Swiss Federal Institute of Technology and Learning Sciences, which is very, very important for our programs that we offer, which I will tell you in a second about it. We also have very close ties to investors. We know all the EdTech investors basically in Europe. As Inge mentioned beforehand, we are a little bit more on the business creation side support for EdTech startups and the EdTech world. But then also what is also important is that we have connections to schools, whether it's private schools, public schools, but also teacher training centers, universities, educational institutions, where we connect the startups actually with those stakeholders. On the other hand, it's not only about education itself. EdTech is a vast, industry. We also have corporate learning and training startups with us. So we do the same basically with customers such as Swisscom, Nestle, big corporations, Philip Morris that are located just around the corner, where we connect education technologies and the companies. So we're basically a facilitator of the EdTech ecosystem. We are not doing that alone. We are connected with Swiss organizations, most likely with research learning science labs, but also with political and governmental organizations, because it's very important actually to have them on board, and very difficult for startups to move along on their journey if they are not also connected to those important stakeholders that dictate the Swiss education system. But then also what we are connected outside of Switzerland. We are part, for example, of the European EdTech Alliance, which is the organization of leading hubs in education technologies, and the Global Education Testbed Network, the leading hub for test beds in schools, which I will tell you about in a second. Also, we were actually approved by the European Union or Commission as a digital innovation hub in Europe. So we go across the borders, and we're not only active in Switzerland. Quick overview about how big we are. We have currently 85 innovative startups. 20% are female founders. Our startups received 220 million in the past 6 years. That's accumulated. We have 4 learning science professors as executive board members. We have an advisory committee members that brings in the business-related part, because we help the startups with business-related stuff. We do visibility in the sense that we create collisions, as we call them, events. We did 250 events in the past couple of years to bring together all those stakeholders you have seen, reaching out to approximately 13,000 people. This is a chart of all our startups. I will now tell 5 minutes about every startup. No, I'm kidding. That's just an overview that we have those 85 plus startups in our EdTech community. What we focus on is what Inge touched. So we're trying to break up silos. One of the initiatives that we have is the EdTech Testbed program, where we actually combine schools with innovative EdTech solutions and providers, EdTech startups, and then schools can test those EdTech solutions and give feedback to us. So we break up those silos of startups, schools, research, educators, and mix them. what does that mean? So we created a quick and fast testing and feedback loop for EdTech tools inside public schools, where we bring all those together. The important thing is to know that we onboard those schools as a Swiss EdTech Collider. It's not the startups that go in there, because there's a too big difference in language. We heard from Inge as well. So we hired former teachers that actually go into schools and they talk the same language. So it's a peer-to-peer learning, basically. Schools can then test those tools that we implement with them inside of the classroom on their own, in their own pace, in their time frame. And what we do is we are just there as coaches and advisors. So the team of the Swiss EdTech Collider is there to support those schools when they have questions in a pedagogical sense. And how does it work? So we go to the schools, we ask what do they need, then we analyze what we have in the Swiss EdTech Collider as tools. We select those tools, we create a so-called testing phase together with the schools that can vary from a couple of days up to several weeks. And then we gather that data in order to bring it back to the startups, co-creation, so they can embellish basically or enhance their EdTech solutions. Or also what we basically do at the end of the day to collect those data to create research papers, light research papers. This is a quick overview how much people we touched in the past 12 months. We only started very recently. We conducted 350 testbed programs, so tests with 280 teachers, 130 schools, and about 5,000 students. At the end of the day, and this is what you can actually read for yourself, we create good practice papers as outputs so that we spread to motivate other teachers to actually participate and test out new EdTech solutions. The latest initiative that we will implement is starting next year. And this is where it gets really interesting, because it's exactly what Inge mentioned earlier on with the triple helix actually innovation. So we bring together now not only the startups, the schools, and ourselves, but we add the learning science actually dimension. So we do evidence-oriented EdTech research, where we will strengthen the interaction between those entrepreneurs, the learning science research, the labs, and the schools. We do this with research pilots that are supervised by professors over 12 months. And then we do create research papers that we will also spread and publish. So, and that should actually give back the angle of evidence-based research back to the startups, which is sometimes missing. This is just the quick overview how that will work. We will take startups from the former testbed initiative. We will go into a co-design phase together with the schools, the professors, and the startups. What do they want actually to research? We do a pilot study, and then we do a pilot validation coming out of it and spread the good research for you all guys. If you have more questions, here's a QR code that you can scan. You can see all the startups, all the initiatives that we did, and the good practice papers are available for you to read in 3 different languages. Thank you so much. Looking forward.
Thank you, Roman. So now I hand over to George.
Thanks, all, and thanks for the opportunity to spend a little bit of time with you. And I want to talk about specifically an organization, well, 2 organizations, one that's about 15 years old and Grail more recently. And Grail is the Global Research Alliance for AI in Learning and Education, which is a nonprofit that was initially spun up, if you will, out of a bid that we made in Australia for a Center of Excellence grant around AI and learning about 3-4 years ago now. But I'll go back to about 2010, 2011, when a group of us started the Society for Learning Analytics Research, which was one of the first organizations outside of the Educational Data Mining Society that specifically looked at the use of the role of data in better understanding how students learn and what the impact of that was. We had a lot of interest going on at the time at some intersecting fields or adjacent areas. We had things like some of you may recall with a degree of trauma, open online courses that were somewhat being used in certain universities. They hadn't quite made the big shift to the popular press that they received in 2011, 2012. There was a lot of work going on in universities like Open University, Athabasca University, where I was at the time. And we were dealing with students and data of student interactions in the thousands and tens of thousands. But what we were seeing increasing was that a lot of the analytics work being done on that data to improve learning, either as a basic scientific activity or as a way of retaining students and supporting them, wasn't actually being done. And so a group of us got together and we formed this organization called the Society for Learning Analytics Research. And we specifically wanted to kind of address this problem of fostering and connecting a research community that at that point globally wasn't really making extensive use of data. And so we wanted to integrate and connect them. And we wanted to focus on creating pipelines for staff or student and faculty development. There was a lot of interest in the corporate sector, in the university sector, in the school sector around having people with the skills and the capability to work with data that's generated as a growing number of educational technology tool sets were being brought into the organization. And so we did, a lot of the kind of things you would expect an academic research organization to do. We started our Learning Analytics Conference. We had our Summer Institute. We started an Australian Asia Pacific division of this, and we started the Journal for Learning Analytics. And these are the kinds of things you expect an academic or a research-oriented organization to do. And as a community, it's been extremely successful. There are an outstanding amount of publications, high-quality rankings by any metric, and it's an organization that has coalesced and largely met its need for promoting a student and a research pipeline. But there's a few things that we didn't quite nail. And this came at the conference. Our second conference was in Vancouver. Shane Dawson coordinated that particular event, and we had separate funding from the Gates Foundation to host a leadership event. And so we brought together university CTOs, presidents, Gates Foundation, Diana Oblinger of EDUCAUSE and others were there. And we wanted to look at how does leadership make better use of data in their institutional practices, and how do you foster the development of a strategy and a culture of this. Unfortunately, things didn't go well from there. From the research lens, it kind of dropped off with a range of other initiatives. And so that was the learning analytics background in space. And so with Grail, which is much younger as an organization, we were looking around and realized, there's a lot of work happening in a number of fields: academic work, research work, individuals producing and publishing good research that has a specific focus on the AI landscape and what AI looks like, and a growing number of labs that were emerging as well. Few listed here. At that time, there was 3 NSF labs. They've blossomed. Inge has been in this space for a long time. There was a lot of national strategy discussions being hosted by countries like Singapore, and also major regions globally were starting to articulate something like an AI strategy. And this came from a paper that we did last year, but we'd been playing with this idea for a while that we classify as human and artificial cognition. And it's the sense that the existing system, to my thinking, won't fully realize the capability of how AI intersects and intertwines with human thinking processes, and Inge classifies it as the hybrid intelligence. And it's this landscape where we want to get these two types of intelligence to integrate. And our argument is that it's a leadership challenge as much as a research challenge. Researchers need to understand what it is, how does this work, but university presidents and provosts need to rethink some of the curricular processes, the way that we do teaching and learning in our campuses and universities, in such a way that it leaves space for AI beyond the current landscape. I've been sorely disappointed that after a year of AI development, we've basically done a few committees on most campuses that deal with the assessment issues. We've had a lot of people linked to a lot of other documents. Every university has a major page of resources around AI, and we haven't really had a systems level conversation around this. And so Grail's intent is to help contribute to making that transition where we start to realize there is a new agent of intelligence in the human cognitive framework. And this is obviously artificial, but we want to understand how those two intertwine and how that impacts our system. So a lot of our effort is on exactly that, taking the research into practice at some level, whether it's at the startup technology layer, so there's influence there. But a heavy focus is on leadership and leadership development. How do we bring universities on board to have a vision for what should be happening with AI? There's a few other approaches around advancing some awareness broadly, and then also about the development within the system. But the heavy focus really is on getting leadership and the system level leaders on board. So we have a number of desires, particularly to realize network effects, getting the benefit of sharing data and policy across our member institutions, looking at different researchers engaging and collaborating on international grants and grant projects. A huge area of focus now is large-scale models. I think there's an enormous lost opportunity for not sharing data. Fei Li did a talk recently where she said, you know, all the universities in the US put together wouldn't be able to create ChatGPT. And so we've been talking to a few organizations around specifically the creation of a data consortium. We've got about 30 million students in our existing committed data set of universities and partner organizations that we're going to be working with. And our goal is basically to create AI and infrastructure for educators to develop AI models while we support individuals to build institutional strategies. So my answer is the way we get into the arena of AI as university leadership is through this type of a process where we're starting to build and develop and curate our data sets and related models. A couple of very quick slides to wrap up. We're structured as roughly charter members, which are universities that are annually committed to engage with us, our scientific committees, and then our group of research partners. Went back. Our committee here, you'll recognize, you know, a number of individuals have been active in the AI and the related landscape for a while. We're well represented globally. And we just finished, which I'll give on my last slide, hosting our fifth event, our in-person conference at ASU, where Inge was one of our keynote presenters. Our ongoing work is...
Let's wrap up because we're reaching the end of the session. So I would like to really thank you all for that. Perhaps we don't have a next session, so I will ask one question to Inge, so thank you so much. This was a very informative question, one of the kind of questions I had. So we can see that part of the work is to actually provide some kind of vision, and find new models to collaborate with different stakeholders. I was wondering if there is enough of the models that you've presented, because and I would say, what would it take to have more of it and to have the voice of educators in schools more amplified? So one, that's for you, Inge.
Yeah, I think we saw a number of ways to do that in the presentations of the labs, and I think all the approaches sort of follow the quadruple helix innovation model, and at the same time they're all slightly different in the way they're approaching this. And this is also why I found this such a very interesting group of people to get together, and it's a bit of a pity that we don't have enough time to actually have a dialogue about this. So I really urge us to do that at another point, because I think there are subtle differences in the way we drive our programs and our labs, and I think there's a lot to learn from each other. So I'm really glad that everybody was willing to share here and show what they're pushing forward to. And I would really hope that maybe also the OECD can play a role in bringing these initiatives further together, having these dialogues, and maybe through platforms like Grail or Serals or any of the other partners here available. But I think that is crucial. We all are struggling with this, and at the same time, we're driving this forward. And so learning from each other in this sphere is essential, and really making sure that schools are in fact heard and being included, whether this is K-12 or university leadership. That is, I think, the essential message that we're trying to push forward here in this session.
Thank you. So actually, yes, let's continue that discussion, and we can certainly have another webinar where, now that people know about all the different labs, we can actually really focus on the discussion and the dialogue on that. So I really engage everyone to read the chapter, in fact, where many of the labs are represented, and actually more than the one that we have with us today. And so we have a lot of very interesting models. I would also want to highlight that co-creation is actually, we've also issued the guidelines yesterday, opportunities, guidance, and guardrails. And, Inge and Jeremy made a lot of comments, which were very helpful at some point. And co-creation is really one of the dimension of it, and co-creation with teachers, both in terms of co-implementation and co-creation. And so I think that, everyone agrees in principle, and we're still struggling to find the institutional ways to making it happen. So thank you so much for showing the way, experimenting and piloting, and for sharing all this information. And let's indeed continue the discussion and have some sequel webinar so that we can discuss further. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Stefan.